Hello and welcome to the Woolly Thistle Shopcast. I'm your host Corinne and this is Maggie, my co-host. And we are here with a special bonus episode for you here in June, which we're very excited to be with you a little bit more this month, and we'll keep trying to do that. We'll see what we can manage. We certainly are not short for things to talk about and things to share with you. This episode is an interview with Susan Anderson, who is the creator and founder of the Journal of Scottish Yarn, which just came out with its 5th issue, and we have it here in the shop. We've had every single issue that Susan has brought out, and I do believe we have all of them in stock right now. And these are tomes. I mean, this is a nice chunky, no ads book or journal, and it covers all kinds of things about the Scottish textile history and what's happening today. It also has lots of great patterns and designs in there for you as well. So we'll go to an interview with Susan in just a moment, and then that will be followed by Rachel.
So because this is a bonus episode, things are a little bit different. We usually pick prizes, but and given that we are recording early, the previous episode isn't up yet, so there are no comments. So we're going to have to work this system out. Thank you for your patience while we do that. But we didn't want that to prevent us from bringing you this wonderful episode and interview.
I'm sure everyone will just be thinking that this is prize enough.
I think this journal is so special. We haven't talked about it in a little while. But there really is so much value in each of these books. Like we said, there's no ads in here. It is just so much wonderful content.
It really is. And she really takes a deep dive into lots of weaving, crochet, tartan, and just, different things that are going on in Scotland in the wool world, which I love. Beautiful photography, and just lots and lots of good stuff. So issue 5 is out now. It also includes a segment with Rachel, which we are going to have on after our interview with Susan.
Yes, we are lucky enough that Rachel joins us once a month, and we've saved this month's segment because we knew she was featured in this amazing publication.
So watch the interview, enjoy, and then watch Rachel and her postcard from Shetland, and we will see you again real soon. I think all that's left to say is, if you go out,
take your knitting.
Bye. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Woolly Thistle Shopcast. I'm Corinne, and I'm delighted to have Susan Anderson here from Journal of Scottish Yarns. Susan is the founder and publishing editor of this most excellent, really wonderful publication. And we're here to talk about all of that, Susan. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's lovely to meet you as well, finally, because we've emailed so often that it's really nice to meet over the Zoom.
I know, it's nice to meet you too, and not in the flesh, but as good as,
One day,
Yeah. So, Susan, let's find out a wee bit about you before we dive into the journal itself. I would love to know where you're located, what your background is, and how you came to be the publishing editor of such a great journal.
Thank you. Well, so I'm in Edinburgh, where I understand you hail from as well.
That's right.
And I was born here, but disappeared down south for work. And for 30 years, can't believe I'm saying that out loud, I've actually worked in financial services, in banking and leasing companies. But I've always made things. I've always knitted. I've always crocheted. My gran taught me how to make bobbin lace. And I remember when I was growing up, me and my sister, summer holiday entertainment was, let's make something. Didn't matter what it was, just let's make something. So we did. And for years I was trying to think of something that I could do that combined my interest in Scotland in making things, but also, and I suppose it's the financial background in economics, the sort of understanding. I don't understand why wool is worth so little, and I realised as well when I started looking at questions like that how little I actually know about textiles, let alone Scottish textiles. So eventually I came up with the idea of just putting all those things together and hoping that other people might be interested, and they seem to be.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, that is such a huge undertaking, though. Did you realize that it was going to be as much as it probably has turned into being? I mean, we all grew, those of us that grew up in Scotland, it's around us, sheep are everywhere, all of that. And you just take it for granted. And but there really is a lot of industry and a lot of small cottage industry businesses doing a lot of different textile things. Were you aware of that when you started, or were you really on the hunt to find what there was?
Everything I started looking at, I was quite surprised at how difficult it was to actually find. I guess I was expecting that there would be like a central place. Excuse me, I've got a cough. I was expecting that there would be one place that I could go that, would then point you to everything else, but there just isn't.
Huh. Huh.
I was quite surprised that whenever I went to look for information, and I was expecting whether it would be through a museum or a cultural organisation, that there would be a central place that you could find lots of things about Scottish textiles.
Yeah.
There just isn't. There's lots of bits,
Right.
but nothing sort of central. And on one hand, you could be negative about that, but I never want to be negative. But on the other hand, it's made me realise that what I do discover is even more to the individual's credit and what they are doing, given that a lot of people are doing an awful lot pretty much in isolation, and it's just incredible. And I want to do whatever I can to sort of give that an identity and play a part in promoting that.
Which is a really great cause. Do you see yourself now then becoming that central knowledge base that regular people who want to know a bit more about Scottish textiles and yarn and all that, that you actually provide that service through your publication?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be immodest or big myself up, but I guess I am finding that in the absence of anything else, yes, I would be delighted to, if I can put Scottish textiles on the map, help to give it an identity, then absolutely. But I'm by no means saying that I'm the only thing.
Right.
But it's such a thing. I think it has such an identity, but I would love to see it like whiskey. I think a lot of people, including in Scotland, will say that Scotland is known for textiles. But when you then say, well, how, what, who, why, it's very, very difficult to articulate. So I want to put the information, the stories, and facts behind it, so that people can articulate that, and it's a thing,
Right.
And then it attracts the investment, it attracts the interest, and then just everything that goes with that.
Right. So you started this, well, your first publication came out, I think, summer of 2022?
That's right, yes, issue 1.
Yeah. And so how long did it take for you to complete issue 1 and get it published? Was that a few years?
No, it wasn't actually. I actually left full-time employment in August 2021, and it was a bit of where do you start? How long is a piece of string? And I had what I did have was lots of lists. I had lists of the business side of it. Well, I'd need to find a designer. I'd need to find a printer. So starting to think, I guess, from my accountancy background, of what would the costs be. But I had a much longer list of content that I wanted to cover, and that list just gets longer and longer all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and I started to build a list of the designers that I wanted to approach to see if they would be interested in me commissioning patterns, list of materials. So people like US Wool, the Berlin Yarn Company, to see if they would be interested in their wool, their materials being used in the designs. And the way I got started, to cut a long story short, was I'd been working with a wonderful group of women. This was over Zoom because it was at the end of
COVID.
The pandemic, and COVID. And we've been doing some coaching sessions by a lady from North Berwick, just along the coast. And it was a lovely, positive thing. But she said that apparently there's a thing in September that you say, right, I'm going to do one thing every day in September. Why don't we do that? So you commit to 10 minutes a day, or however long you want, just do one thing. And the sorts of things that the group were choosing were like, I'm going to practice on my piano for 10 minutes a day. I'm going to do work in my garden for 10 minutes a day, or I'm going to sit in my garden for 10 minutes a day. And what I thought was, well, I've got all these lists. It is quite daunting where to start. I'm just going to do one thing on my list every day in September. And I think it only took me about 6 or 7 days, and that was me off.
Wow.
Because one thing leads to another.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things was actually visiting the Great Tapestry of Scotland in Galashiels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Why
was
don't you? We definitely I want to hear about that, but I just wanted to say that I got goosebumps when you said that, because, I think the longest journeys do start with the first footstep, right?
Mm.
So often we just don't make that first step. And it sounds like your September challenge just helped you get over the hump and actually, start, and then you were off. So, and now we all have this sort of wonderful magazine to really enjoy and learn from. So
Thank you.
that's amazing. Yeah. So tell us about the tapestry, because I remember my mum went to see that when I was up in Inverness. I haven't seen it. I'd love to see it.
Oh, you must. It's incredible. And so it's about 160 panels, something like that, and each one is a metre square.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a permanent exhibition space in Galashiels, which was a centre of Scottish textiles, really until the 1970s, 1980s. And the building that the tapestry's in is purpose built. It's absolutely stunning. So they've been able to design, but one of the lovely things about it is that there's no glass over the panels, so you can see the stitches and the colours really, really clearly. And in fact, they offer you a magnifying glass when you go in.
Wow.
So I had no idea of any of this, but I had in mind that, well, if this tapestry is kind of an overview of Scottish history, there's going to be a number of the panels that relate to textiles. And I wanted to do a couple of things at issue 1. I wanted to set the scene for Scottish textiles in 2 ways. One was to give a very high level overview of the history, and the other one was the sheep, but we can come back to the sheep.
Right.
And what I thought was, well, maybe I could use some of the panels from the Great Tapestry to illustrate this article, the overview. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
I think there were 22 panels in total that cover textiles, and we focused on 6 of them.
So for people that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about how the tapestry came into being and when it was done? Because it's a recent occurrence, right? And it was done by embroiderers all over Scotland. That's
right. I think, it started in something like 2009, 2010, and the first panels were displayed in the Parliament in 2013. Well, it's the Scottish Parliament, actually at Holyrood in Edinburgh. And there was over 1,000 stitchers that were coordinated. And in fact, one of the coordinators who at that point wasn't an embroiderer was the guide who actually came up to me when I'd spent 3 hours just going around half of the tapestry with a notebook and asked me, people take a long time going around this, but what are you doing? Not that long. And it turned out she was one of the original coordinators who worked with Dory Wilkie, who worked with, I think it was Alexander McCall Smith's idea, and his wife, who apparently is a stitcher.
Right.
And they had the artist Andrew Crummy and a historian, Alistair Moffat, who pinned together a narrative and who came up with the illustrations that were then distributed around groups of volunteer stitchers to create, and the thing is beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, I was just going to say I have to see it when I go home. I have to see it. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. They do have a really good website. So if anyone isn't going to make it to
we'll make a caption of that so that people can click over and see that and understand what we're talking about. And of course, our conversation today is going to be, there'll be knitting, but it's textiles, it's tartan, and it's embroidery, and it's the sheep themselves. So we'll be going all over the place, which is fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to just interrupt our flow for a minute and ask you what you're wearing, because I know everybody at home will be admiring what you're wearing, and you should tell us all about it.
So these are both patterns from issue 3, actually. So this one is the Robach Shawl. I'll show you. So we've had some reasonable weather on the east coast of
Looks
Scotland,
nice.
but not
Yeah.
today. It's grey, yes. I love that combination of textures, and this is
Yeah.
it's just silk mohair
Yeah,
by a
lovely.
local hand dyer and just a sock wool.
Yeah,
And
very
my
nice.
friend Alison Mayne, who goes by Knitrospective, designed that for me.
Very
Oh, it's
nice.
lovely and cozy though. And then
Yeah,
this is the sea pink top,
it's beautiful.
which
Yeah,
Solveigh Lace of Isle yarn. She's another local hand dyer just down the coast.
great.
Designed for me, and it's actually, this is alpaca, but I have made another one in actually Di Gilpin's Lowland yarn,
Yeah,
so it works in a woolly wool as well as
yeah.
in this
Oh, I bet
alpaca
it
as well.
does.
So yeah,
Yeah, and the sea pinks, of course, are those tiny little flowers on the grasslands next to beaches quite often. Very pretty.
yes, yeah, and they're just out this time of year.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so sorry, we have to get that out of the way because people will be wanting to know. So that tapestry history is great, and I hope people go check it out. But you're finding that there's a interconnectedness between the wool trade historically and all the stories that you're finding, and there's no shortage of stories, is what I gather. You're just finding
Yeah.
more and more. So can you talk a wee bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. You might need to stop me actually. So one of the stories, in fact, this is one of the panels from the Great Tapestry, is of the Borders Abbeys in sort of Melrose, various abbeys, and most of them, if not all of them, are ruins now, because in Henry VIII's Reformation, these were some of the monasteries that were dissolved. But when the Cistercian monks set these up, and apparently these monks were great agricultural innovators, they basically had these big white sheep, cheviots, and their surplus wool became the basis of the wool trade, and it was a source of massive wealth. I mean, not just Scotland, but wool producing countries around the world. And there were preferential sort of tax trade terms set up to get that Scottish wool on into the continent. And first of all, it was through Bruges in Belgium. But over decades, Bruges harbour silted up, and anyone who's been there, if you look at it on the map, you can see it's quite far inland. So that what they called the wool staple then moved to a place called Vera in the Netherlands, which they still have a really strong connection to Scotland. And I would say that most people in Scotland have never heard of them.
Right.
And I discovered through beginning to become aware of this, and this will be an article that comes up, I think possibly issue 7, that so there's a set of tapestries designed by the artist Andrew Crummy around Scotland. They're amazing. They're just such community activities, but there's one in particular called the Diaspora Tapestry that was created for the year of homecoming in 2016. And the idea was that people with a connection to Scotland around the world, whatever stories they wanted to tell of their heritage to Scotland, they would stitch these stories onto panels. They're a bit smaller, they're half a metre square, and they tend to travel in sets to different countries and guess where they're relevant. And they've got an even better website, so you can actually go on and see every individual panel. It's beautifully flagged as well.
Okay.
But with Vera, if you look at the Netherlands section, I think there's 11 or 12 panels to do with this diaspora tapestry on Scotland. 7 of them are about Vera. That's how significant the wool trade was, the wool staple was. And, that's the sheep, the Borders, the wool trade. Oh, and so it goes on. And just that diaspora tapestry as a source of stories about Scottish textiles. I mean, not all of them are positive, of course. We're talking about Industrial Revolution and so on, other things that. But yes,
just amazing.
That's just one example.
So Scotland does have a very rich wool trade or wool history. And can we talk about some of the sheep and the breeds that go into Scottish yarns? That would be fascinating to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, not least Harris Tweed as well, and this is something else that I need to research and get into so everything's related, everything's connected. So the other thing that I wanted to do in issue 1, as well as that overview of the history, was to look at the sheep.
Yeah.
And I kind of a bit of research, I think to start with, I could probably have listed, if I'm honest, 4 or 5 sheep breeds. And then I got to 9 with a bit of research, but with the help of Debbie Zawinski, who wrote the book In the Footsteps of Sheep.
I love that book. I love that
Like,
book.
you stock it, don't you?
Well, we did, and we're getting it back in because you've brought it back to
Really?
mind again, and it always did really well, and it's just such a good book. It's wonderful.
Oh, it is. It is the most charming story. I think it's the one book I have that I really don't want to lend anybody because it's so special. Anyway, so I met with Debbie and I wanted to ask her about the sheep, and I didn't know about the Beaumont, the Scottish Merino.
Right.
So that's what then got me to 10 sheep.
Right.
And so we've got everything. Well, they fall into 2 groups. We've got the long tail sheep that have come from the south, possibly brought here by the Romans and before.
Right.
And then we've got the short tail North Atlantic sheep breeds that came possibly from Russia, Scandinavia, through Vikings. And it's no coincidence that quite a few of these short tail breeds, like the Shetlands, Hebrideans, North Ronaldsay, Solveigh, Borderay, they tend to be on the islands now, so they're on the extremities. And they're on the extremities because
they're hardy.
They're on the edge. They're hardy, but they're on the edge, so they've been left there.
Right.
And some of these are breeds that have, well, but I think all of those have been very rare breeds and are in various points of being rescued thanks to the endeavours of some amazing people. And Shetlands is
of course
such a success story now.
Yeah.
And then looking, I was just going to say about that, why I mentioned Harris Tweed earlier, is Harris Tweed apparently should be made of Hebridean, Scottish Blackface and Cheviot, I think. So these connections, although an awful lot of the textiles, whether it's cloth or whether it's knitwear that you get from Scotland now, whether it's cashmere or whether it's wool, a lot of it is made of merino, which we've imported from around the world. But there are various people looking at what we can do to get more local wool into that manufacturing supply chain. And I think there's efforts like this around the world, thank goodness, as well.
Yeah. And I think, at least for knitters, I think we are really clued into the Scottish breeds. And one of the things about those breeds on the fringes, the short tail ones, I mean, they are very similar to how they were thousands of years ago. It's stayed very true to what they were before. And I know Thistlers just love the wool as it is. Like, we really embrace that more crunchy or, more rustic yarn anyway, that we really appreciate that. And I think too, just the way of life that that preserves for the people raising those sheep is amazing. And you can draw pretty much a straight line from the knitter to some of these sheep now, which so if that was
you stock used wool as well, don't you?
Yeah, we have used wool. In fact, we just did our taster box and used wool was in there. I think that's a very special one. And they're using lots of different breeds, but they're mostly local to the north of Scotland and whatnot.
Well, I've actually got an issue 5 article about used wool.
Great.
As well. And in issue 6, I didn't do it for issue 5, but for issue 6 there's going to be actually a design that uses some of their yarn as well, which I'm extremely excited about. But I didn't understand that an awful lot of the wool they use, they're doing just an amazing thing in trying to add value to local wool and try to add to the local economy quite successfully. That a lot of the fleece that they use is actually Zwartwool or Zwarble, how you say that.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise that they are also using quite a lot of Scottish merino or Beaumont that they get from Aberdeenshire. And wow, it's just incredible.
Do you know if it's just one farm in Aberdeenshire? Because I've heard of this, and I think it is just one farm, and they're supplying all that. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's great, because I think for the general taste, softer is better, and so that Scottish
Beaumont sheep.
Beaumont is will help with that. Great. So Uist is in issue 5, which is coming out now. I think we have pre-orders for it. Is it twice a year that you come out with an issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. In May and November.
Okay. And all right. So what else is coming in issue 5 that would be of interest to us?
Well, so I've got a story of Fair Isle, and this started from Rachel Challoner of Barkland Croft,
Yes.
who
Our Thistlers
understands.
will know Rachel very
Yes,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I had just I got this must be when I started. I was completely charmed by the pictures of her Shetland lands that she puts
Yeah,
up,
I know.
and then I did not put two and two together until I was interviewing her for the article. But I have a photograph actually of it in the magazine, and if anybody searches, they'll find it. She actually was a finalist in a
Yeah,
competition. She created a Fair Isle lining for a Barber jacket, and this was
fantastic.
Barber reloved with British Vogue,
Right.
and
Yeah, she went
it's
down
just
to
absolutely
London
incredible.
and yeah, in fact,
Yeah,
I'll just mention to our viewers that if you want to see that, she did send in a postcard and you'll find it in the playlist from Rachel on our channel. But it was absolutely beautiful and she had Fair Isle mapped out on inside and yeah. And I think to be one of the runners, well, she was one of the last 3 that they picked the winner from. Just fantastic. Yeah.
oh, it is, and she's just starting a project
Mhm.
um, to create get the words right, a visual archive of Fair Isle knitwear from Fair Isle. So
Actual pieces. Yeah.
yeah, so pieces, and the only thing she's asking, and she's just created a Instagram account
Mhm.
to record this, where she's put up what she needs. She needs evidence from people that this is actually from Fair Isle, it's made in Fair Isle, but it doesn't have to be a garment. It could be, well, a tea cozy. You know,
Right.
there are various things, and she's got some examples on there of the types of labels that they might have used.
Right.
But Fair Isle is absolutely, part of Shetland.
Hmm.
But I think the view would be that, and her view would be that the Fair Isle from Fair Isle is something very, very distinctive, and because there are so few people actually creating it now, it is
Right.
even rarer.
Yeah. That,
Yeah.
that is,
So
and that's one of the sad things about textiles is it's really hard to preserve them. I mean, I know
yeah,
that we can do that now, but from history past, that it's
yeah,
hard to preserve them. So capturing any evidence now is a great idea. Yeah, she's
yeah,
full of great
absolutely.
ideas. Yeah.
Oh, she is.
So anything else you want to say about Scottish sheep, maybe the Cheviot or any of the other breeds that really stand out to you?
Well, one of the stories that still fascinates me, and of course that means I'll return to it at some point, is the fact that we've got the Cheviots, the Borders Cheviots, and then we've got the North Country Cheviots.
Right.
And the North Country Cheviots come from Caithness and Sutherland. And they were taken, some sheep were taken from the Borders up to the far north to develop separately. And they're actually bigger, even bigger than the Borders Cheviots. And it just seems that even though they're further north and what I would have assumed was less favourable conditions,
Right.
they've done even better. But the reason why one of the reasons why they've been able to develop as a separate breed really is because across the middle of the country apparently was the Scottish blackface.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like this, you can plot the sheep on the map, and in fact, something that I want to do is actually create that map to take the illustrations that I love and actually place them on the map of Scotland, because I
Yeah.
love, it's a bit like you can allocate or look at Scotland from the perspective of whiskey, and you've got Islay and Speyside and so on and so on, but you can also look at the country in terms of the sheep as well.
Yeah, and I think too, just as in whiskey, the different water will create the character of the whiskey. So doesn't the living conditions, what they're eating or what the weather is in their particular
Yeah,
area will affect the wool, and that's what gives it that lovely, I don't know, delightful story and just
yeah,
sense of place.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
I think thistlers always get excited when there's a wee bit of vegetable matter in their skin because that's part of, that sheep's life right there. So yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. No, that would be really great to have a map with the sheep
Yeah,
sort of planned out like that.
yeah. I love seeing any country that does that, and any country could, of course. So
Yeah,
like Retrosaria, Rosa Pomar has done it
yeah,
for
in
Portugal.
Portugal.
Wool Dreamers I've
Yes.
seen
Yes.
one done for Spain. I just think they're so
amazing.
inspiring.
Yeah, we're huge fans of Wool Dreamers. They're amazing, and they're just putting out such good content as well. You know, it's fabulous. They're really getting the word out there. Yeah.
They really inspire me. Yeah.
So how do you do your research? How do you get into all this and find out, you know, what you need to find out?
By following my nose to a large extent. One thing leads to another. I love chatting to people. But I tend to go down rabbit holes. So whether that's there's a question that I'm just trying to answer. So you know, when I don't know about you, but when I read something, if I read a piece of writing, I never like to be left with unanswered questions. So I like the writing to be clear and entertaining, but also like it to be complete.
Right.
So I'm constantly so I start with a question maybe, but I'm constantly right. Okay, but what about that question? What about this question? So I tend to be just going out answering lots and lots of questions.
Yeah.
So for example, Dana at Useful, who helped me with, well, obviously I interviewed her for the article for issue 5. I don't think I annoyed her too much, but it's just that checking every detail, making sure that everything is correct, and but in an awful lot of cases, as we were saying right up front, there's a lot of information out there, but it's just finding it.
Yeah.
And trying to tell the whole story.
Right. And do you find, I mean, you started this during COVID, so you probably did a lot of Zoom calls and, you know, armchair research basically, but do you get out and go to some of these places now, or how is it done?
Yeah, not as much as I would like, but yes, you just cannot beat meeting somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And
right.
even, I mean, even now I vend. So I'll have a market stall at the yarn festivals in Scotland, and given the opportunity, which of course is at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, chatting to other vendors, and comparing notes and sharing rumours, and have you heard about and all this type of thing, and then people, it's like so Claire Campbell at Prickly Thistle. I've just started to get to know Gillian at Lunan Bay. And then Di Gilpin herself. So have you heard of Lunan Bay actually?
Actually, no, I'm curious.
Oh, have a look, because and in fact issue 6 is going to be quite a lot about cashmere in it, which all came from there was a tour group from the States who I was speaking to, and one of the lovely ladies came and asked me, why is Scotland famous for cashmere? I was like, I actually don't know. So I want to be able to answer that question.
That's fantastic, because I've been thinking a lot about cashmere, and yes, Scotland's got a strong cashmere. You know, they do a lot of milling of it, and you know, creating the fiber or the fabric rather. Yeah.
One of the answers apparently is the water, as you were saying earlier. But Gillian at Lunan Bay, so she has a hair. I think it's herd is the correct collective term for cashmere goats, all cashmere goats, and she with her husband is trying to create an economically viable herd. And so they're still quite small scale, but they're finding, it was really worth following, the Lunan Bay farm on Instagram. They're finding that even though there are 200 breeding, they're not ewes, are they?
No,
nannies. Must be nannies.
Nanny goat. Yeah. Nanny and Billy.
Versus, that's it. Thank you. Versus, a Mongolian farmer who'll have thousands.
Right.
They're finding that there's an awful lot of research going on in this country, and there's global organisations and associations where, so for example, they had a university in England, I think, developed a cashmere comb. Who knew? And which I think it was something to do with more comfortable for the animal, but also more efficient power. And a group of Mongolian shepherds were here in the UK looking at this, and they all asked if they could go to Lunan Bay to trial this comb.
Wow.
And they're right in the middle, and then people like Johnsons of Elgin, who are big cashmere knitwear manufacturer producer in Scotland, are very supportive of what they're doing. So there's this it died. The actual production of cashmere in Scotland had died out. I think historically we've imported the volume of it anyway, but this is the idea of actually these animals would thrive in this climate, so why wouldn't we have them here?
Right. And that's
fascinating. Looking forward to getting into that story more.
Yeah. I hadn't thought much about it, but I bet you goats rue, where their coat lifts off and they're combing it off. They're not shearing them like a sheep. Yeah.
No.
Fascinating.
Apparently some places do, and I think there's different reasons for it. But and sometimes if you get a cheaper cashmere jumper, say, and sometimes even people can still find that prickly, and that tends to be because the goat's been sheared.
Right.
Whereas if it's combed, because you get the sharp edge of the hair, basically.
Right. So it's better quality all the way through, just doing it the natural way. Yeah.
Apparently. But I'm looking forward to finding out a lot more about this.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because cashmere seems to have caught my interest lately. I've been looking at different mills, and of course I know Elgin, Johnston's of Elgin. They've got a great shop and cafe and everything. It's a really nice setup they've got.
Of course, because that's near where your family is.
Up near Inverness, that's right. Many thistlers will know the yarns that you're featuring in your journal. Do you want to tell us some of them, and maybe just sort of surprising things that you might have found out that you didn't know about in some of them?
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the biggest surprises has actually been with the Berlin Yarn Company, which you stock some of Meg's yarn, don't you?
We have very diminished supplies right now, but yes, we're huge fans.
It's very limited edition, isn't it? Because it really, I mean, she's a Hebridean sheep farmer, shepherdess on the tiny island of Borderay. In
Berneray,
Berneray, did I say Borderay? That's a sheep, isn't it? Berneray, yes, that's it. Oh, get them mixed up. And she, as I understand it, she's been able to expand buy in fleeces from neighbouring farms, but I think it's still all within 5 miles.
Yeah.
Probably because if you went further than 5 miles, you'd be in the middle of the ocean.
You'd be in the ocean, which is what her company is called after, is the Berlin boat that would take the sheep to and from the islands. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And apparently the Berlins were the short version of the Viking longship.
Right.
Because they were good for island hopping.
Exactly.
Yeah. But she blends. So she's got her pure Hebridean, which is obviously very dark, but she buys from these neighbouring farms and crosses, all very local to her, that she blends to get the beautiful greys that then are being over dyed. Right. And that's Cheviot, that wool. Right. And I have a ball, in fact, I've got quite a lot of her wool, but I have a ball of the pure Cheviot and pure Hebridean, and they are they're lovely. Lush.
I know.
Oh, they are.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that purebred pure yarn is really lovely. I think lots of people are really enjoying, because it's the hand of it too. Soft is just soft and it's lovely. But I think as you get further along in your knitting journey, or your, whatever textiles you're doing, and that reminds me of something else I'm going to mention. But I think as you become more experienced at knitting or what have you, you really start to appreciate the different hands of things. I think spinners have known that for years, because they'll spin various things and enjoy and, investigate the different textures in that. But I think knitters are getting there. At least I think thistlers are. Well, that's what we do an awful lot of, is just really enjoying different blends or different purebreds or what have you. That's gorgeous. So that's knitted in Berlin yarn.
Yeah, this is Berlin. In fact, Meg Roger, the shepherdess, actually designed this. So she's designing more and more these days, and absolutely beautiful designs. And she is an artist as well. Yes. In fact, she possibly was an artist before she was a shepherdess. Yeah. And I don't know if it's that artist eye, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. And I hope it's not the last thing that she designs for me. But I know I'm saying I much prefer to use woolly wool. Mm-hmm. I use merino, but I just enjoy using woolly wool more. And actually, although this Berlin I would wear next to my skin, I always tend to wear a t-shirt under a jumper anyway. Right. But I find it so comfortable wool.
I know.
I just
I love it.
absolutely love it. And then when you know the story behind it as well, it's just even more precious.
It is. I actually was lucky enough to visit Meg years ago and spend the afternoon with her
Oh,
and Esther Rutter, who wrote This Golden Fleece, and had a
yes.
lovely, lovely afternoon at her craft with the sheep and the standing stones and just, all her wool and everything. It was a great day. And,
Oh,
just being on those islands, it's just so atmospheric as well.
yeah.
Yes, she's doing great things. But seeing that reminds me when I was going through your journal in preparation of today, I was noticing that you have several versions knitted as samples of your patterns. It's not just one and
Yeah.
done. And how do you
Yeah.
manage that? Do you have knitters or are the designers doing that? Are
No,
you doing
well, so
that?
that's a good question. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because I love making things, and I love to actually make the second sample if I can.
Uh,
Time means I can't make all of them.
yeah.
But my sister actually, the same sister that she and I's children used to just make things. She'll make most of the other samples,
That's
but
great.
we are getting to the point where I'm going to bring in a couple of friends to help as well, because while we're making, so the designer makes the first sample, and then I or my sister or somebody close makes the second sample, because we're forensically testing the pattern while we're doing it. But quite often the designer will also have the pattern they're designing tested by their own designers, because it's that, as you know, worst fear is errata.
Right.
And
Yeah.
getting better at it every time, but you just want it to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to mention, because you also
Yeah.
stock the Black Isle yarns, don't you?
Yes, I love that, Julie. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, he's also, well, the Black Isle, very close to Inverness as well.
That's
But
right.
have you worked with her Killen sock yarn
Yes,
before?
we have. Isn't it great? Yeah.
Oh, it's fabulous. And so she was really keen to create a sock yarn that didn't use nylon.
Right.
So she uses mohair in it.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually in issue 2 where there's an article about her, and part of her story, part of her journey is to be as sustainable in her, all of her dealings, all of her daily life, her business, as she can be. And even though that mohair that she uses is from South Africa, she's made a series of decisions that means that actually that was the most environmentally friendly one that she could. But the Killen sock is stunning.
Yeah.
And she's actually got a couple of shawl patterns in it as well, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And I think there's jumper design. But that's another surprise, actually, that yarn to me is just beautiful.
Just amazing.
And I love the thought that's gone into the design of it.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, I know the story about the mohair, and that she really did her research to see, well, what is the best way to do it. And I think coming from South Africa, she's also supporting local people there, and she can feel good about that. And I think us knitting with it too, we're lucky enough to get batches from Julie with whatever yarn she's wanting us to see and have. And she lives in Fortrose, which is where my granddad lives, so I do know the Black Isle really, really well. And it's just so great. It's so great to talk to you about all of this, though, because sometimes it's sort of I feel like I know all this stuff and I do my best to share it, but there you are doing the very same thing. It's great that we're finally connecting properly here on the Woolly Thistle. But you did just make me think, because you had mentioned about US Wool and how it started, and we're just going to go back in. But US Wool and how it started was a community project, and you mentioned to me about Green Mountain Spinnery, which is just down the road from us. Yeah. So did Green Mountain Spinnery have a similar remit in starting their business?
Yes. So apparently the story went that the lady who, unfortunately I don't think she's with us anymore, from Green Mountain Spinnery, was a friend of one of the people who was on the original community group that came up with the idea of trying to add value to the wool club in youth. And that lady seems to have really inspired them with, well, you're facing the same issues that we are dealing with. So fleece is being burnt or buried. We're just trying to add value to this local material. And this, I think this was, it's all in the article, but I think this was like 2008, 2009. And then over a few years, and they went really, really slowly. They involved the community. They ran training courses and things like wool grading. So they had a guru from the British Wool Marketing Board who came and trained them. And the people on those training courses didn't necessarily need to be future employees of Useful, because there's only 4 of them there anyway.
Right.
But actually, Meg Roger of the Berlin Yarn Company was one of those trainees.
Really?
Yeah.
So isn't it?
Isn't it just?
Yeah.
But in the nicest possible way. And
Yeah.
there was talk about interconnections as well.
Yeah.
And that you think, oh, interconnections means it's a small world, but actually, no, it's people supporting people.
There's lots.
And everybody rising everybody up.
Yeah. Well, I think Green Mountain Spinnery's been around since the 70s is my take on that. I think they've been around a long time, but I know that I think it's still employee owned and, very much part of the community. And they're right off the highway. So if anybody wants to visit them, they can. It's right off the highway. Wow. And they do great stuff. They're wonderful. Yeah, and they're sort of, I didn't know they had a connection to US though. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they inspired. It was big inspiration actually for US though.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, I think that's a great place to end our conversation today. Just that, America and Scotland, I mean, Scottish people love Americans, always have. Growing up there, I know that. And I think that's a lovely relationship right down the road here and over there in Uist. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I hope we have lots more chats.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much and take good care. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi Woolly Thistlers, it's Rachel here at Barkland Croft in Fair Isle. I hope you're all keeping well. What a month it's been, and the most important thing, as you can see here, is we have a new addition to our family. So I'll tell you a little bit about Sparky and his story. On one of my hill rotas last month, I spotted this little chap looking rather sorry for himself. It did look like he might have a problem with his leg, but he actually doesn't, which was a relief, but not looking good at all. And you can just see his mum running off in the distance. I'd been watching this lamb from a distance for quite a while, and it was clear that something wasn't quite right with him. So I made the decision to take him home, and he was about a day old. He certainly wasn't a newborn lamb. He was completely dry. His umbilical had more or less dried up as well, but he was incredibly cold, and he'd clearly not really had any food, any milk get inside of him, so very, very hungry too. And I honestly wasn't sure he'd even make it all the way home, seeing as we were just about as far from Barkland as you could get. Once we got home, I took his temperature, which was 36.7 degrees C. Now, a lamb's temperature should be 39, so he was quite clearly hypothermic. And before I could feed him, I had to get his body temperature up, because otherwise, if you feed them when their body temperature is cold like that, it can actually cause them to go into shock. So he had a session under the hairdryer, and once his body temperature had got up, I was able to give him a good feed of powdered colostrum, which is that really, really rich milk that they would normally get in the first sort of day from their mums. And that completely changed him. He went from being unable to stand up on his own and just being really floppy to actually being able to stand up and kind of start to be a bit more alert and look around his surroundings. Then he enjoyed a nice long nap by the fire before Tortuga came to help with warming duties. He seemed especially taken with Nieva, and she quite liked having a friend that was smaller than her as well. After a few days, once he'd got a bit stronger, we of course had to have the obligatory photos by the daffodils in the little sheepy jumper. He had great fun making new friends with the cats and some of the sheep, and very quickly found his feet. A few days into May and we finally got the weather we had all been waiting for. Just look at it. Such a blue sky, all that sun, and not a cloud to be seen. It was absolutely wonderful. And as you can see here, first day for me being out without a jacket on, and first day being out without Wellington boots on. Ruffalo decided that despite the sunshine, the lettuce seedlings were apparently cold, so she decided to stay indoors and incubate them. Meanwhile, I got on with some outdoor jobs and started off by putting up some new nest boxes for the birds. It even marked our first day of t-shirt weather, and Sparky was busy helping me in the vegetable garden. Where's he gone? What you up to? The thistles this year so far have been something else. They have sprung up just everywhere, and I've never known a year where they've come up so quickly and so profusedly and grow so big in such a short space of time. They take up so much room, and where they grow, it means the grass won't grow. So it's really important to dig them out and remove them, which, as you can imagine, is quite a big job. It's already taken us several sessions, and so far I've got 10 sacks of thistles with probably about 2 or 3 more sacks to go. I think Meg and Sparky were tired out after a long afternoon's thistle picking. As is so often the case, after a sunny and warm day, we nearly always get at least a day of fog, and this was no exception. A few mornings later though, I saw this beautiful halo around the sun. May has marked the start of the cruise ship season here in Fair Isle, and we get quite a lot of the smaller cruise ships visiting us, usually with no more than about 200 passengers. So it was time for me to go on duty at the museum. And this is our museum, the George Waterston Memorial Centre and Museum. It's quite small, but we do have a lot of things on display and hopefully something to interest everybody. And of course, we have our knitwear displays. We've had more days of fog. But some beautifully clear evenings too. The sunshine and warmth saw the first of the bluebells starting to bloom, such a pretty sight. The hens have enjoyed dust bathing and sunbathing, and Ruffalo's done some more gardening too. I took advantage of the good weather and commenced Operation Recover Roly from way up on the hill there. And here he is, looking very smart in his dog harness and lead. He's not too sure about it though, but I had a bucket of sheep nuts to encourage him. He was soon quite happily trotting along the verges, stopping for snacks every now and then. And there we are, we're almost home. I think he's very happy to finally have some proper grass to eat, because there hasn't been much on the hill. So despite him looking very thick and fluffy there, it's all his fleece, and he's actually very, very skinny underneath it all. But very happy to have him home. Nieva and Sparky had great fun tearing around the garden together. Good boy. And later that evening we had an influx of dozens of silver Y moths. They're incredibly fast, so it was quite hard for me to actually focus in on them, but hopefully you can get an idea of just how many there are of them flying around the bluebells in this short clip here. And what a stunning evening it turned into. This was about 10:30 at night, and it was still quite warm. You can just see the mist is starting to roll in down from the hills in the north and along the ground there. Unfortunately, my phone decided it didn't want to focus on it. Next day, of course, following a warm day, we were back to fog. But you could see the blue sky and sunshine were up there somewhere, trying to burn through it all. Over the last month you can see just how much little Sparky has grown and come on, but he still loves his cuddles with Nieva. Before I go, I just wanted to let you know that the latest batch of my Beecroft yarn will be going on sale on my website from the 1st of June. And if you'd like to find out more about it, then please feel free to head over to my website and have a look there. Thank you. And I'll leave you with some clips of Sparky having his mad 5 minutes. Bye for now. See you again next month.
He's stalking us. He's seeing where we're going next. He's going home to tell his mates. Yeah. Somewhere underneath all the merchandise. Well, there's a little shop.